Look, web dev is far from perfect. I'm not going to sit here and pretend otherwise. Browsers are slow, JavaScript is slower, and the developers who are contributing to a lot of these things don't necessarily do the best job. But I still feel like the conversation around web dev and the damage it has done is incredibly toxic and misses so many of the important points and the strengths of the web itself. I want to take some time to break down why the web is how it is and why that's actually a pretty good thing in the end. Because I'm increasingly tired of people crapping all over JavaScript for reasons that make no sense. This one's going to get me in a lot of trouble, isn't it? The web has revolutionized software, and to say otherwise would just be bad faith. The potential inherent to a single shared platform that we use to access remote resources from anywhere in the world on basically any device is a dream we have been chasing for as long as software has existed. We have been trying to find standards to build on top of so that one app can work on a phone, on a computer, and on devices we couldn't even imagine when we wrote the software. And that's what we got with Java, kind of. The Java revolution was a wild ride, seeing a billion devices running the same language where you only had to port the virtual environment for it. And the result was really cool. For the first time ever, people were building things that were truly reusable on all sorts of different platforms. And we saw everything from banking software to Minecraft built using Java for this reason. JavaScript was built originally to take that vibe, the ability to run things in multiple places, but also a scripting language that was relatively quick to write in. JavaScript had nothing to do with Java or Oracle to the point where it's become a lot of contentious lawsuits.
What I had created became JavaScript. The name is a total lie. It's not really related to Java so much as to a common ancestor, C, in syntax.
But JavaScript did bring that essence of a reusable, globally shared platform that happened to be written in 7 days and full of a lot of issues, but we'll get to that all because the result of JavaScript has been incredible. Other attempts existed both before and after JavaScript to make something similarly universal, but a little more, flexible and less chaotic. And all of those attempts have failed pretty outright. From Dart to ActionScript to Flash, we've seen a lot of different ways to do interactivity in the browser, but we always go back to JavaScript because in the end, it's good enough. And because it's good enough, we've been able to build an incredible world on top of it. And these are the things I think get missed by some of these shitposters. So if you're not already familiar, T. Soding, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, did a video showcasing just how rough Create React App was for him. And I totally understand. Create React App was an awful experience and to this day still kind of is. Because when Create React App was built, React was still a new framework, and the idea of an all-in-one bundled experience to build a single page app with the HTML, CSS, and all the assets and everything was so new that they had to break a lot of ground and build complex integrations around this new thing called Webpack. It was chaos. But the goal of Create React App wasn't to expose all of this chaos to you so you had to manage it all. It was to try and assemble it into a platform we could build into and on top of. And as painful as it was, it worked. It let us revolutionize how we built software at Twitch. Yes, to this day, the core Twitch website is an ejected Create React App, which is insane to think about. That this simple starting point you could use to go build a quick project was the same thing Twitch used to build its entire website. But at the same time, the pile of pieces we had to assemble was so chaotic and fragile that the experience wasn't great. And as he showcased in his video, there's a lot of crap going on in there. There's thousands of subdependencies doing all sorts of weird stuff. But by doing that all for us, we were able to build in a way that let us and our teams move faster and build better software than we'd ever built before. And while, yes, there's a lot of dependencies on my machine as a developer, the result is actually a better experience for our users and also a better developer experience for our teams overall. But more importantly, by doing all of this and getting us to the point where these things mattered, we were able to build new primitives and standards that have been much better for us to work with, like Vite. Vite exists because things like Create React App were so bad, but the value they provided was so high. By making these things work, we actually put ourselves in a position where suddenly making them better matters. And yes, things have to be bad before they can be good. And yes, if you're using the old version of things and you're not keeping up, you're going to encounter some of those rough stepping stones that got us where we are today. But those stepping stones are what make the web so incredible. And I don't see people making these same complaints about other languages or solutions that exist outside of the web. Because if you've ever tried to run an old Python project, Good luck, have fun. You have a dependency that's Python 2 and you're using Python 3? Good luck. These problems exist just as bad, if not worse, in other languages. God forbid you try and run an old Python project on a new machine that hasn't run it before, you're screwed. And don't even get me started on the state of game dev. The amount of times Unity has gutted and rebuilt their physics engine in ways that are entirely not backwards compatible is just hilarious. These problems exist in every subset of dev that matters. The only time you don't run into these problems is when you're going off on your own path, ignoring the way others do things at all. But there's a reason we don't do that. In fact, the web kind of went the other way. Rather than everyone making their own bespoke solution and hiring a bunch of native engineers to figure out how to render text, we centralized on something that was very standard and also kind of scary. I think it inspired a lot of the frustration that we see now. We centralized on Electron. If you're not already familiar with Electron, it's a Chrome shell. Yes, Chrome the browser, but it's a wrapper so you can build a desktop application with the same technology you would build something for Chrome with. The benefit here is you can write the same JavaScript code, have it run in the browser, and also have it run in Electron, but also that Electron shell is already built for other platforms. So you can write your code once and have a good user experience on Windows and on Mac. This is going to annoy you guys, on Linux. Yes, the only reason there's actual desktop software on Linux is Electron. So when the people who complain all about the web ruining software are also on Linux, they're particularly delusional because their Slack and Discord apps would not exist on their platform if it wasn't for these standardized tools. And while yes, a native app would be a little bit faster, that same native app would not exist. This is not an either or, and this is why I am so frustrated, because people love to pitch this as, well, if we didn't have these web tools and technologies, we would just have lots of better native apps. No, we wouldn't. Nobody was building those apps. That's why we made Electron in the first place. That's why we built all of these things in the first place. The solutions we had weren't getting better, so we built better ones. And more than any technologies before it, the web has maintained a blistering pace of innovation and improvements, where we'll try something new, we'll run into problems, we'll fix those problems, we'll build new things on top of them, and we continue to iterate and progress as a result. There are obviously plenty of hiccups as we do this, and we make mistakes like web components, but we also see massive success like with Vite or with server rendering. And in all these cases, we realized, yeah, we had a problem. The first solution didn't work, but we can learn from the space that we put ourselves in and build something way better on top. And we've seen this so much. Obviously, with this comes a bit of fatigue. And I understand that this sucks, especially if you're a new developer trying to catch up and keep track of what's going on. You finally learn React, and now Solid's the hot new thing. It feels bad, but this is the case in almost every field. I covered the Unity drama last year, and you cannot believe the number of people who have dedicated their lives to Unity, who are sincerely considering leaving it all behind to try this new open source engine or move to Unreal, just because they were scared of the company that happened to run the tech they dedicated their lives to. Most of the web is open source, so we don't really have that problem, which is a massive win in and of itself. Most of the alternatives that we're talking about to the web are proprietary things that we could lose ownership of any day. But on top of that, they're just as chaotic. They're innovating at similar paces, or they're not, and it sucks. We could look at Apple, for example. I'm regularly called an Apple simp, and to be honest, that's probably fair. There's a lot of things Apple does that I can defend that most would disagree are defensible. Some of them aren't, though. And the current state of Xcode is a tragedy. It has not progressed meaningfully at all. They only recently introduced the idea of a server to Xcode. There's basically no plugin architecture. People just hack the hell out of it to make it useful. It's bad. And that's because it's not built on top of a pile of open standards that are improving constantly. The web is one of the most open standards there is, and the result is more access to software than there's ever been. Not only can anyone access a website, anyone can build one. And with other tools and technologies like C++, getting started to build your first thing, God forbid your first website, was incredibly difficult. And the feeling of sending someone a link and having them actually experience the thing you built, good luck, have fun when you're doing it in other languages and servers. Ugh. The reality is that web dev has enabled people to build better user interfaces faster. It's allowed people to improve the technologies they're building on quicker and on top of a great body of work that we're all standardizing on top of. And it lets us just solve these problems so much better than anyone had before. While yes, there are websites that do this terribly. And while I agree 20-second load times on websites are unacceptable, usually those websites are outliers. And often those websites would not have existed at all if it wasn't for the work being done on the tools to make it so fast to build. I remember back when COVID started, there was a COVID tracker website that took 20 to 30 seconds to load. And a bunch of people went and pointed at the React bundle and how slow it must be to parse all that JavaScript. Someone took the time to analyze the site for real, It was sending 50 megabytes of JSON and having the browser parse it. That is not a failure of web developers. That's a failure of APIs. The API that was serving the data to that website was way over serving, and now it becomes a problem for the web dev to deal with. I absolutely love this meme. Because a lot of the complexity we deal with in modern web and modern front-end technologies comes from the complexity that is managing servers. If you have two different APIs you need to get data from, good luck, have fun. If you have a backend that's serving too much or too little data, you're in for a fun time. All of these types of things just are how the web worked. And because the tools on the web got so good that we could work around these things, and now we're at the point where we can use servers ourselves as web devs too, for things like Next.js to do our backend calls ourselves, the need for a disgruntled backend dev that gives us a crap API is going down more and more. The vast majority of the time people complain about these things, the stuff they're complaining about exists because the existing tools that weren't web focused were too bad. The reason Electron exists is that the alternatives for cross-platform native application development were shit. And let's be frank, they still are. The reason that client-side applications and routing has gotten so popular is because servers were returning the wrong data or were so far away from our users that the speed of light transfer to get to the user's device was still slow enough that it felt better to have some navigation on the client side. A lot of these problems exist because the way we did things before wasn't optimal. I'm not here to say the way we're doing it now is. It's just dishonest to pretend it's not significantly better than it was. And that's why I get so frustrated with takes like these ones. As an engineer, I can perfectly see all the made-up problems we are forced to keep solving because we are using browsers. What? This one confused me genuinely, and I had to sit and take some time to parse it because this is a response to a tweet about random problems that exist in modern web stuff like React. But this is just what? Like, the browser is how most people access software. The browser is by far the most used piece of software in the world. And with tools like Electron, we're now able to use the same technologies we did to build really good websites for all sorts of other things. Someone just said something really funny in chat I want to highlight because it's very real. I used to use Gmail via Mutt. I think Theo and I would have been best friends for 15 years ago. Yeah, I never used Gmail via anything other than the Gmail website, except for on my phone, I used the Gmail app and I used the Outlook app a bit too. The reason Gmail was revolutionary is it was the first good browser experience for email. And it became the default really quickly because the ease of access and also the ease of iteration there is massive. The web comes with so many absurd benefits. Everything from access globally to your software to powerful native platforms you don't have to build yourself to immediate over-the-air updates whenever somebody loads a page. I don't have to worry about the version of the app they're using and making sure the server supports this old version because it's all just coming from a web page. These powers have made the web what it is, and there's a reason it's the default. It's not because we're lazy devs or because we suck. It's because it's both the developer's preference and the user's preference too. This is why I get so frustrated when I see this take, because no alternative is being presented here. The alternative is getting really good at GTK and writing native desktop apps yourself, which sure, these two could probably do, but I shouldn't have to invent a game engine every time I want to build a quick web app. And there's a reason big companies aren't doing this either. If this was actually better, then people would build competitors that do these things. Similar to, hear me out, how we got here in the first place. Google beat competing platforms because Gmail was a better experience. By making a web experience that was good, they made something people wanted and they did it better than the competition. If the users and the devs didn't like this, or the result was so much worse that they were making bad software, the market will solve these problems. If you actually think the tools we're using for web dev right now are so bad that all of our experiences are worse as a result, then theoretically you'd be able to move way faster and build stuff way better. Why don't you? Why do I not use a bunch of native apps on my computer? Because it's not easier and they're not better a lot of the time. I won't sit here and pretend that a perfectly coded native app by an iOS engineer isn't going to be better than a React Native app, but it is going to have less features and it is going to be updated less often. And in the end, that matters a lot more because having a perfect piece of software crafted as a sculpture first try is imaginary land. Things need to change. And I think it's telling that the person who's most aggravated about this is a game dev, especially because they're an older game dev. Because in the past, you would ship your game and you'd be done. This idea of software changing over time was entirely foreign to these individuals. They never worried about what happens when we need to ship an update, what happens if somebody's on an old version, because the worst case, they're making a multiplayer game. It just says you need to update or you can't go online. The complexity of modern software development is foreign to these individuals, it seems. And that sucks because I know they're talented devs, but they're just borderline dishonest when they talk about this. I actually had to switch to the Ping account in order to even read these tweets because Jonathan Blow blocked me because I made a skill issue joke when he was talking about how slow a brand new computer was opening up YouTube. Just obnoxious stuff. But they're so just anti-web that they don't even make good arguments for it. Most of these people have never seen anything else, not having been brought up in a culture of system understanding. They don't know the difference between made-up problems and real ones, but it's not really their fault because the entire profession has been derelict in its duty. I'm trying not to get too spicy here, but then he makes this IQ points point. If people understood how many IQ points they are losing by treating this giant mess of unnecessary made-up junk as if it were foundational rocket science, things would change pretty quickly. Very few people get to the point where they can see this perspective anymore. Show us the work. And this is my problem. Like, these aren't points. These are performance. He's not here to tell us how much better things could be. He's here to tell us how stupid we are, how many IQ points we're losing, not acknowledging the fact that the platform he's saying these things on can only exist because of these modern tools. People can try to go build their own thing, not using these tools and technologies, and it will take them 10 times longer and they won't get anywhere. I've seen this so many times. I'm actually consulting with a startup right now that built everything using native technologies. And they are moving way, way slower than anybody competing with them. And yeah, the app feels slightly better when you use it. Cool. That's not what matters. And these modern tools and technologies exist and are adopted not because we're too low IQ, but because they work well for lots of teams. None of these people seem to have worked on large teams, and none of the things they recommend work well once your team hits a certain size. By having a standard platform, we can build software better. And I would like to think they know this because in game dev, we have moved away from bespoke engines to the point where every studio just uses Unreal or Unity now. And it's genuinely hilarious to me to see game devs fail to acknowledge that standardizing on platforms, despite the fact that we have to work around different problems, often ends up being worth it. Because I guarantee anybody deep in the wires of Unity dealing with the chaos that is their physics engine is going to be shat on the same way that we are for using JavaScript, even though it's the exact same thing. If you didn't use Unity and you built your own game engine, your physics probably wouldn't be so jank, but you also just built your own goddamn game engine. Yes, if we didn't use Electron and JavaScript and React, we wouldn't have to worry about re-renders because we'd be too busy working on making text render in the first place. It's just so dishonest, and I'm really tired of it. Like, just so tired. Web dev and JavaScript have massively increased the number of developers and also the number of users of software. And it seems like with that, elitism is an inherent next step. And that breaks my heart. Just because we have more developers, there is now a rift between the ones that existed before and the ones that exist now. And it's genuinely really sad to see. I hate that there are new developers who are getting started learning these modern web tools and technologies, building things they're proud of, and making websites with a link they can share to a friend for the first time. It's not too different from the shareware days where we'd hack up a quick little game and send it to our friends. I know, I was there, believe it or not. But now that access is easier, the number of developers is going up, and the need for those developers is too. And I guess with all of that, so does the elitism. If I've learned anything from talking to these types of devs, is that they don't actually care about web dev. They just care about the craft of how their code looks and feels. They don't want to build good software. They want to feel good when they build it. I'm just here to make cool things. I don't know what the hell they're doing. And honestly, if I hadn't learned React in 2018, I might have burnt out on dev entirely. Thank you all for listening. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you know of good alternatives to modern Electron software that are built in other things, feel free to let me know about them, because I just haven't seen many. Appreciate y'all a ton as always. See you in the next one. Peace, nerds.